Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Freedom Factor. So, we got some stuff to get into today, so I'm going to get right into it. The other night was Donald Trump's sixth State of the Union address, and I wanted to share some thoughts on it. I don't want to summarize the entirety of it because it really is just there's a lot there to cover, and a lot of people have already kind of given their thoughts, and I really don't think that that's necessary, to restate what's already been stated. But I do have some thoughts. So I guess to kind of organize this whole, episode, is to really just go over kind of my analysis, my thoughts, and kind of comments and critiques and whatnot. And then at the end, I'll kind of give like an overall rating of how I felt it was. To kind of preface that, I think it was a decent speech. Wasn't the best I've ever seen, but it wasn't by far the worst. I think one of the key elements of it is it was really a mask off moment for a lot of the Democrats. And I kind of got into a little bit of it on Twitter about this. And if you follow me on Twitter, you might have seen some of the comments back and forth. To kind of catch you up, before the State of the Union, I saw a report about people who were going to be, I guess, sitting out and boycotting the State of the Union, and I made the comment that this is kind of juvenile and petulant and frankly un-American. And I still stand by those words. I mean, if you're offended by the fact that I said that this is behavior that's un-American, well, if the shoe fits, I'm sorry, but the concept of the State of the Union is enshrined in the Constitution of the United States. It does dictate that the president should give this, update to the legislature. And so, yes, while for the most part, what started, so to kind of give a little history on it and not to get nerding out too much on this, the first State of the Union was in 1790, and it was done by George Washington. And it was an address. It was a speech delivered to the legislative branch of our government. It wasn't until Thomas Jefferson, mind you, the third president, that started this whole, I guess, at the time, tradition of doing it in written form and submitting it to the legislature. Kind of did. I don't know what his whole reasoning was. I think it was kind of for brevity's sake and to kind of put it down in writing so it's a little more, I don't know. I wasn't alive at the time, obviously. I think that was just basically Thomas Jefferson's way of saying I'm a far better writer than I am public speaker, which I mean could be the case. And so he did that. And really, it wasn't until 1913 that it really became this annual tradition to do this joint session of Congress address. And that was when Woodrow Wilson delivered it and began delivering it as an annual address to both houses of Congress. And then it just continued on from there. So for over 100 years, we've had this tradition of a State of the Union address, this big speech to update the State of the Union and go over, the accomplishments and then the coming priorities of the administration. And I mean, as much as I despise Woodrow Wilson, it is kind of a neat little thing he set up. And this is a tradition that we've carried on ever since. And so for people to sit it out, I get it. People are like, well, there's no requirement that they're there. Yes, but out of respect for your office and the office of the president, I don't care if you don't like the guy. I'm not a huge Trump fan. I don't like the guy that much. I mean, I like some of what he does, and I'll get into it on this analysis of the State of the Union. But out of respect for the country and the office of the president, whether you like the guy or not, you should be in attendance for this, I guess, traditional event that we hold every year within our government where we could just hear it out. You may disagree with everything the man says and does, but out of respect for the office, not the person, but the office, that is kind of decorum. That's the thing that you should do. And by not doing that, it's kind of like a slap in the face or giving the middle finger. And look, I disagree when the Republicans do it too. So don't just think I'm dogpiling on the Democrats, but it's this particular instance that the Democrats were doing it and were taking part. Now, the only exception to that, and someone pointed this out, in 2022, a group of lawmakers, to include Thomas Massey, who I hold in very high regard and have a deep respect for, they sat out the 2022 State of the Union address by President Biden. However, their reasoning was not in protest of the president. Their reason was in protest of rules relating to COVID testing. Because 2022, COVID should have been over. It was 2 years after the pandemic started, and they're still demanding that members of Congress to attend the State of the Union must submit to COVID testing. And it was absurd and ridiculous. I don't fault them for that. That was them protesting the rule, not the office, not the president, not the speech, not the man. So that being said, first things first, overall, I think Trump started off good. He talked about the border. He didn't really go that in depth. And I will say, I think he could have, that's one of the things he's been successful on. And I think he really should have stuck to that. But on the other hand, glossing it over and continuing on, he then kind of went into some things that didn't really, like economics. He hasn't been great on economics. He hasn't been horrible, though. It's not like the Biden administration, but it's not perfect. I mean, the was the big beautiful bill just continued on Biden era spending, which, like, come on, dude. Like, you're supposed to cut spending. We're hitting 40 trillion in debt by at least by the end of this year, if not before then. You really have got to get a kind of handle on things. And then he and I don't have the clip. I wish I did. He did a whole thing about the Somali fraud going on in Minnesota. And I love that he talked about these Somali pirates, and the camera quickly cut to Ilhan Omar, which I thought, whoever that cameraman is perfect. But that was a good moment. But he then said that he was going to have Vice President J.D. Vance in charge of a fraud task force. Well, what happened to Doge? Because I remember last year at the State of the Union, he was talking about Iran and Doge. They're going to do great things and make all these cuts and figure out where all this fraud and abuse and waste is. And then that kind of like started moving, and we were seeing all this stuff, like with USAID and all these NGOs and all this really great stuff being pointed out, and the light being shined on all this wasteful spending and all this fraudulent and abusive, use of our tax dollars, and then nothing happened. The big beautiful bill didn't address any of the cuts proposed by Doge. They didn't cut USAID. They didn't get rid of public broadcasting. They didn't do anything. The Department of Education still exists and persists. And then they increased defense spending, which I understand Trump's kind of agenda is this whole like peace through strength. That was kind of the theme of the State of the Union, was peace through strength. Even though I have some, I guess, disagreement with that idea that I'll get into later. But he pushed this like peace through strength thing. And so we're not seeing that. And so this spending bill didn't do anything good and all that. But here I want to play a clip that I think is pretty good. I think it's to kind of kick things off was relatively a good thing. And this I was very surprised by. I'll give you my thoughts as soon as we play this clip. So I'm going to roll the first one.
As we ensure that all Americans can profit from a rising stock market, let's also ensure that members of Congress cannot corruptly profit from using insider information. They stood up for that. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Did Nancy Pelosi stand up if she's here? Doubt it. Pass the Stop Insider Trading Act without delay. I wasn't sure if anybody even on this side was going to applaud for that. I'm very impressed. Thank you.
So yeah, as you saw in that clip, I think it was great that he actually got Elizabeth Warren to stand up and clap, which I thought was kind of good. I agree. The insider trading thing, definitely something that should be passed because yeah, far too long we've had members of Congress go in and they're making $170,000 a year. And then after a few years, they're multimillionaires. And it's like, that doesn't make sense. And if you're, I mean, I don't know about you, but if a family is making $80,000 a year, they're not accumulating, after 3 years, $250,000. You spend a lot of what you make. And it seems like Congress somehow is really getting, like, these members of Congress are getting way more money than they should from what we would expect from their congressional salary. And I kind of have a question. I would really love to have seen it. We saw that Elizabeth Warren and a lot of Democrats stood up and cheered. I wonder if Dan Crenshaw stood up and cheered that one, because there's been some allegations against him on that. But so that was one of the good moments. The Insider Trading Act. I don't think anything's going to happen from it. If it does, great. But if I'm not hopeful. So that one kind of. But then Trump kind of went after this whole woke ideology, and this is one that I really do think was quite telling. This was a big mask off moment for the Democrats. I saw Dave Smith address this, and I kind of disagree with him because I'm seeing it still to this day, especially where I live. But it is something we should worry about. So this next one is kind of another area that I think we should address, that I think Trump did a really good job, and I'll give you thoughts as soon as it plays.
But surely we can all agree no state can be allowed to rip children from their parents' arms and transition them to a new gender against the parents' will. Who would believe that we're even talking about this? We must ban it, and we must ban it immediately. Look, nobody stands up. These people are crazy. I'm telling you, they're crazy. Amazing. Boy, oh boy. We're lucky we have a country. With people like this, Democrats are destroying our country, but we've stopped it just in the nick of time, didn't we?
So yeah, I think that was a very powerful moment when I actually burst out laughing when he did that whole "these people are crazy" line, because honestly it's insane. Look, I've tried to steer away from this topic a little bit because I feel like it's really divisive and people get spun up in the wrong direction. I harbor no hate towards people who what's the best way to put this, want to transition or whatever. If you're an adult, do whatever. Don't ask me to play along with whatever pretend game you want to play. But in terms of this specific instance, what he was talking about, where if you are a parent and this is happening. I know I'm going to get some people commenting or making, statements that like, no, it's not happening. Well, it's not happening. We should just make it illegal and it wouldn't bother you, right? But it is happening where kids are confused. Kids are impressionable. Look, your prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until you're roughly about 25. And So even under 18, kids don't really know what they want, especially young kids. We're talking like elementary and middle school age, the under 14 crowd. They don't really know what they want. I mean, there was a time I wanted to be, not to get too far into it, but when I was like 12, I wanted to be Army Special Forces. And kind of wanted to when I was in the Army. But either way, so, like kids can, kids don't know what they want. Kids don't understand. And when they're confused about gender ideology, when their hormones are bouncing off the walls, the schools or other adults taking advantage of this, I think, is wrong. And Trump was right to address this, that no state should allow for a child to be taken from their parents because the parents refuse to allow their child to transition socially. And I agree with that. I think that is a perfectly fine thing because the parents still need to be able to have some agency over their kids, especially when they're in schools where this gender ideology is so pervasive from teachers and administrators and other adults and stuff. I think we need to cut this off because no, if you are in school, the entire purpose of being there should be education, reading, writing, arithmetic, and STEM. That's it. You should learn about science. You should learn about math and not this phony baloney science about men can get pregnant and all that. And some people are born in the wrong body. No, that's not true. And this whole advanced biology that people use is just ridiculous. So I think Trump was right to say that. And the fact that a lot of the Democrats didn't stand up and there was some heckling, no idea what they were saying. Who cares? It's just insane and stupid. So yes, those people are crazy. And I think that the whole idea of Trump saying that we should prevent this is granting agency to parents. And that's the most important thing, especially after, the FBI investigated parents for speaking out, calling them domestic terrorists because they didn't agree with pornography in schools. I'm sorry, but if I find out that my child's school is putting sexually graphic material in an elementary school, I'm going to take offense to that and I'm going to oppose that. I'm going to have something to say. Luckily, my child goes to a school that won't do that because it's not a public school. And I think that's the problem in America is so many public schools are pushing this radical ideology when they shouldn't. And kind of on that, I think any school that allows for a teacher to call in sick to attend a protest, that teacher should be fired. And if they try to take their children, my child or any other child to a protest to use them as political pawns, they should be fired and probably prosecuted. I don't know what for, but they should definitely not be doing that, and that is inappropriate. So anyway, back to the State of the Union. I think Trump was really good about doing that whole "these people are crazy." And look, this next clip this one's a doozy. This is a very telling moment of the State of the Union address that I think it was Trump's most powerful moment. Now, I don't credit Trump. A lot of moments in the State of the Union I felt were, I agree with Dave Smith on the sentiment. It was very boring. A lot of it was boring. This was the longest State of the Union in American history, which Trump just, and I'll get into my criticisms of the kind of the broad view of the State of the Union in a little bit as soon as we're done with these clips. But I just want to point out that his strongest moment was this one right here. So let's roll the tape.
So tonight I'm inviting every legislator to join with my administration in reaffirming a fundamental principle. If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens.
Okay, let's pause it right here. So, he said, like, if you could see the picture or the video here, and for those of you doing audio only, I'll kind of explain. It's really quite divided in the chambers. One half, which is the Republican side, is all standing and clapping, and then the Democrat side, basically the entirety of it, is sitting. Very telling. I think if nothing else, that is extremely, extremely telling. All right, so let's continue.
Isn't that a shame? You should be ashamed of yourself not standing up. You should be ashamed of yourself. That is why I'm also asking you to end deadly sanctuary cities that protect the criminals and enact serious penalties for public officials who block the removal of criminal aliens. In many cases, drug lords, murderers all over our country, they're blocking the removal of these people out of our country, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
All right, so enough of that. First thing I wanted to say, that was a very telling moment. I mean, it really should. Everybody should have, even if you don't like the guy, to stand up for that. You should be placing American citizens before illegal immigrants. I think is a sentiment that really hurts the Democrats. That's like, if you're not going to stand for that, like, come on, dude. The other part that was telling was it showed Senator Mark Kelly, who is a veteran, just sitting there seething. And I get it. Mark Kelly hates Donald Trump. But at least, like, you should, it should be bare minimum, regardless of what side you stand on. You should put Americans before anything else. And the fact that he sat there seething is very telling. And honestly, I have no respect for the man. And then finally, the end there, where you had that unhinged lunatic Ilhan Omar just shouting and screaming at him, and especially when he's talking about ending the policy of sanctuary cities, that was completely unprofessional. And honestly, I think if Ilhan Omar is deported tomorrow, it would be a day too. It would be like the best day ever. It's long overdue. She should be deported back to Somalia, because we know she doesn't give a damn about the American people. She does not run this country in the interest of anyone besides herself and Somalis. Remember the whole line, some people did something on 9/11? Yeah, that's Ilhan Omar. Get rid of her. She is awful. Awful. She's not only a bad congresswoman, she's just a bad person. And I don't wish any ill will on her. I just want her to get the hell out of this country. So that one was I think was the Trump's, like, I guess, best moment of the night. That was his pinnacle moment. I will say, and I wish I had the clip. I didn't grab it in time. He did a good job at the very end of, he ended on a good note. The rest, there's some stuff, and we'll get into in a minute. But this is the last clip I'll play. This one's actually a pretty good clip. This was right after that, with Ilhan, trying to heckle him. But I agree with this sentiment as well. This is another thing I definitely agree with.
Perhaps most importantly, I'm asking you to approve the Save America Act. To stop illegal aliens and others who are unpermitted persons from voting in our sacred American elections. That cheating is rampant in our elections. It's rampant. It's very simple. All voters must show voter ID.
So he does. I agree. The SAVE Act should pass. I've heard Mitch McConnell, Cocaine Mitch, is the one that's holding it up. And of course, most Americans, including a very large portion of Black Americans, approve of passing voter ID laws to ensure that Americans vote in American elections and non-citizens do not. Period. And that clip doesn't have it, but he had a bit after that, basically setting kind of guardrails against what parameters there are for mail-in voting. It should be for people who are absentee or serving in the military. And like what I had to do when I was in the military, I in the 2008 election, I had to do the voting because I was still a registered voter in Colorado, even though I was serving active duty in the military, living on the other side of the country. So I agree with that sentiment that if you're an absentee or active duty military, or even TDY military, which if you don't know what that is, it's immaterial, but it's military away. Those should be the only instances of vote by mail. All the rest, you should vote in person the day of and have to show ID. It's the only way to really guarantee that we have a legitimate and transparent election. And I know people will say, well, that's like a poll tax. No, it's not. It's proving your citizenship. And the fact that the biggest argument against it is it's racist and it's sexist to demand ID to vote is just complete bullcrap. First of all, on the racist thing, I don't know anybody who is of any minority that doesn't have an ID. And plus, it's not racist to demand ID to operate a motor vehicle. It's not racist to demand ID to get a job, because you do need to verify your identification to get employed as a W-2 employee. That's part of it. It's not racist to demand ID to buy cigarettes. It's not racist to demand ID to buy alcohol. It's not racist to demand ID for almost anything else that you need ID for. And if you don't have an ID, I'm pretty sure almost every state has a way of you to obtain an ID. And then second, the whole argument that they make about women getting married, it's a non-starter. That is a dumb argument because it is not. I mean, yes, women get married if they take their husband's name and they do the whole name change thing. There are some hoops to jump through. That's just part of changing your name, though. It's not, it's not like discriminating against people who get married. It's not discriminating against people who are women. That is a stupid argument. Millions of women get married and are able to successfully change their name. It's really not a big deal. And furthermore, if you're too stupid to figure out how to change your name legally and have it reflected on your ID, I don't think we should be trusting you with voting. That is a pretty awesome responsibility and big, powerful responsibility as an American citizen to vote. Once you turn 18 and you're eligible to vote, how is it a problem to present ID? You should have ID anyway. Everybody should carry around ID. It's just a simple fact of life. It's how our society functions. If you get into a car accident, even if you're a passenger, it would be nice to be able to identify you if you're unconscious. It would be nice to be able to identify you so notification of next of kin can occur. So the Save America Act, most people in America approve of it, and I think they support it. And I think Congress needs to just go ahead and pass this, especially before November, because the kind of sentiment is the Republicans are going to get killed in November in the midterms. And I think the SAVE Act is a way to make sure that if they do, it's legitimate and there's no question. I mean, you got states like California that restrict the ability to ask for ID to vote. That's basically asking for fraud. Colorado does almost completely mail-in ballot voting. And I think that is that's asking for fraud. And I think we need to stop that practice. Yes, it's convenient. I agree. I am 100% in agreement with that idea of the convenience factor. However, there is no safeguards. There's no checks. There's no way to actually, they don't, if they regularly went through the voter rolls and sent out like little notices to every single person at their registered address where they reside, not where they receive mail, where they reside. Prove that you are this person living in this place and you're still registered XYZ. Great. But they don't do that. There is no kind of guardrail to check to make sure that the voter rolls are accurate. There's no way, and in some states like where I live, you're allowed to, when you renew your driver's license, you can update your voter registration. I did it a few years ago. It's not that hard of a process, and everyone can register to vote online nowadays. Everybody has access to the internet if they want it. Even if it's to go to a library where there are computers with internet access, you can do that. Everybody has a smartphone. I don't know anybody who doesn't. And so it's easy to keep your voter registration up to date and have an ID. Some states have even gone to a digital ID that you can have on your smartphone. Colorado being one of them. So this whole ID argument is stupid. So anyway, moving on from that, Donald Trump made the case for war with Iran, which I was totally anticipating he was going to blow some smoke up our asses. I totally disagree with going to war with Iran. I've been mulling the idea over of doing yet another video of why we shouldn't, making the case for not going to war with Iran, because I do have a previous video where I talked about the Iranian nuclear threat and how much of a threat they don't pose, and I'm thinking about doing another video about Iran. It would be, I think, the third video I've done on Iran. But really, like, making the case for Iran, I don't think there's no there. Nobody supports the war. I think we're up to 85% of Americans do not want war with Iran, and it's all serving in Israel's interest. So I totally am opposed to that. I think that the whole propagandizing the American people into a war with Iran is just foolish. And I thought Trump ran on no new wars and touted how good of a negotiator Steve Witkoff is and how we should be trying to push for a diplomatic resolution to this conflict with Iran. Because honestly, like, yes, I agree. The IRGC is bad. The Ayatollah is a bad guy. Just like I've said, Putin's a bad guy. I get that. However, as an American, I'm a little more fearful of, I don't know, our elections being, not up to par, or the rampant waste, fraud, and abuse going on with our tax dollars. I'm more concerned about those things than I am with Iran. I'm more concerned about who is in this country that was allowed in during the Biden administration under their open borders policy, because there's intelligence to suggest there's thousands of terrorists in this country, which if you want to really kind of get scared by all that, I would highly recommend watching the latest Sean Ryan interview with Sarah Adams, who's a former CIA targeter. That one, they go over the Homeland plot. I'm more concerned about that than I am with Iran. I am not fearful that Iran is going to launch a ballistic missile at America in the next even 10 years. I'm not worried about that. I'm more worried about domestic policy and protecting our actual, country. I'm more concerned about the cartels basically running the entire failed state of Mexico than I am concerned about Iran. So I think that was I was expecting it. I was expecting him to make the case. But other than that, a few of the highlights, I think the awarding of honors, there was a Coast Guard, I guess, I don't know what they call him, Coastie. I don't know. But there was a Coast Guard service member who was awarded an award. There was someone else awarded an award. And then I think this is the first time in history Donald Trump awarded two medals of honor at the State of the Union. One was to Chief Warrant Officer 5 Eric Slover, who was the Chinook pilot, the lead Chinook pilot in the Maduro raid. And then the other was a 100-year-old World War II Navy captain who had fought in all sorts of conflicts from, I think it was World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, which I thought was really cool. That was cool, awarding the Medal of Honor. I know it was, a lot of people say it was a political stunt, but I mean, the Medal of Honor it's the highest award in the country for military honors. I think that's pretty cool. I don't agree with the Maduro raid. I think it was foolish and short-sighted, and I don't agree with how, like, the reasoning behind it and how it transpired, like with the charges. However, I will never disparage or not support our military service members, of whom I am one. I think that that's, I support them. They don't really get control, especially at that level with the special operations community, because CW5 Slover is pilot with the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, which is basically the special operations helicopter pilots. They're the guys that take our Tier 1 and Tier 2 units into combat. They do some amazing things. Some of their works were highlighted in Black Hawk Down, which I think that just barely scratches the surface of their capabilities. Especially there's a part in the movie where they're talking about they're kind of button heads with the general about it being a day operation, because that's the whole thing. Like the 160th, they're known as the Night Stalkers. They own the night. They're some of the best helicopter pilots in the world, if not the best helicopter pilots in the world. They are just amazing pilots. They're super talented, super brave, very well trained. They have some of the best equipment available, and they do the most insane operations. They operate mostly at night. They do operate during the day, but their bread and butter is night operations. And so I'd be interested to see the entire justification for the Medal of Honor, because every Medal of Honor comes with, and forgive me, I'm blanking, I'm having a brain fart on the name, what it's called, but his citation, why he got it, what actions he conducted to get it. Trump kind of briefly talked about it, that said he planned the operation, the aviation portion of the operation, which is pretty cool. I mean, CW5 is the highest warrant officer rank in the military, or in the Army. And if you look at the picture, I should have pulled up a picture. He's got 10 hash marks on his right sleeve, which those are his overseas service ribbons, or overseas service marks. They're just little lines that are sewn onto your uniform. Each one represents 6 months deployed overseas in a combat zone, and he has 10 of them. So that represents, he's got a cumulative of 5 years of serving overseas, which, not surprising for being in the 160th, being a part of the special operations community, but also on top of that being a CW5, which means he's been in for a while. And I get it, like, those who are in the know will know that special operations tend to promote a little quicker than regular military. Your standard military, I know people who have made rank in special operations a lot faster than people who joined at the exact same time and stayed in the kind of, conventional standard military. So that's pretty cool, though, that they got that. And I wanted to address, there was some controversy a lot of people have been saying online, and I even saw that Rep. Tim Burchett, who I have a lot of respect for, he retweeted it, where they were talking about Slover and his award, and they were saying the Democrats didn't stand for that. And from everything I can gather, and if I'm wrong, I'd love to be proven wrong, but everything I can gather, the Democrats did stand for that. I think that is something that people shouldn't be latching on to. That's a stupid point, and I think a lot of it's missing the point. There's plenty to criticize the Democrats over, not standing for serving America, not standing for Irina Zarutska's mother being honored, which I'll get into, and other moments where they refuse to stand. And I think trying to use this as a gotcha, it's stupid, and they shouldn't do that because I have yet to see any evidence to support that claim that the Democrats didn't stand for the Medal of Honor awarding of these two veterans. So that's stupid. People shouldn't latch onto that. There's plenty more to criticize the left over. But furthermore, to kind of wrap up, it was a lot of the stuff kind of Trump did was kind of lackluster. It was him just kind of rambling on. And I mean, he does his usual Trump thing, like when he said, if you agree with this statement, and, half the room stood and the other half stayed seated, and he did the whole, oh, look at them over here. I think, that's your typical Trump. It's kind of dumb, but that's his kind of personality. So I think overall the speech was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't bad. I think it was just kind of middle of the road. I'd give it like a 6 out of 10. However, to kind of end and wrap up, I think the whole State of the Union thing has become more theatrical than really informative and an actual like State of the Union. It looks like political game playing, like especially with the whole kind of gotcha moments. I mean, I get it. Like Trump was baiting them, and they took the bait, and it was stupid of them to do it because I think it's going to hurt. And who knows? Maybe it'll hurt the Democrats more than I'm anticipating in the midterms. But like the whole not standing thing, yeah. But I think that the State of the Union has become too much political theater. For starters, there's way too much ovation. There's too many moments where you just, the speechwriters, and I don't know how much the president actually had a hand in writing the speech. I mean, I'm sure he has some, knowing how Trump is, because he does like that control. But the whole speech writing, like putting in, I guarantee you, they put in these lines that evoke applause, and it's made to do that. And so there's all these breaks for applause, like, I fixed the economy, I fixed the border, please clap. It's I think that makes it longer and it unnecessarily. I think that's kind of stupid. Cheer for, good things, but that just is dumb. Like I prefer, especially like at award ceremonies where there's lots of awards like graduations and stuff, hold your applause until the very end. Let them get through the entirety of the speech and then clap. That would be a lot more preferred. And then the speech is like 25 to 40 minutes instead of, pushing 2 hours. I think that's something that could be, I wish we would move away from and kind of get to more brevity's sake. And then the second thing is all these like personal stories. I don't know, and I'd be curious to see where it started. But I think it's kind of, I'm not a fan of it. I get it, like you're honoring people and you're personalizing, some of your policy positions. But I think this whole like personal story, he spent a extraordinary amount of time on Team USA hockey, which being a big hockey fan, I am ecstatic that Team USA men's and women's both won the gold medal. That is amazing. That's a great accomplishment, huge achievement, and we should be honoring them. But he spent a really long time on that. Kind of cool, though, that Connor Hellebuck, the goalie from Team USA, is getting the Presidential Medal of Freedom. That's kind of neat. I think that's awesome. But to spend a lot of time on that and then to tell all these little personal stories about, this person did this person did that, I think that is more political theater than anything. And I'm not doubting I'm not doubting how genuine he is. I get it. Like, yes, you want to honor these people, and I'm not detracting from these people. I get it. Like, honoring Irina Zarutska's mother, good thing, all that. But, like, during the State of the Union, it just comes off as disingenuous, and it's more political theater. and it elongates the speech, and it makes it just kind of hokey. And I don't agree with that. I think that they shouldn't do that. It's really just politicking, and I get it. It's the game, but it's really just like the curtains are moved a little too far. We can kind of see what's backstage now, and it's like, let's cut that out. Like, it's supposed to be the State of the Union, and having all these like little personal stories, I think, is just kind of, without like taking away from those people, because some of those people, like the National Guardsman who got shot in the head, Trump wanted to honor him because he survived. The young soldier with him did not, during that terrorist attack in DC. I think, okay, I appreciate that, and my hat's off to that staff sergeant. However, that's kind of like political grandstanding, by having it at the State of the Union. I think he could have, a better avenue for that would be like an individual ceremony. And I know you're not getting as many eyes on it, but you shouldn't be doing it for recognition, like patting yourself on the back. Even though I don't think we've ever had a president who didn't absolutely have at least some semblance of narcissistic tendencies to just kind of go, I'm the greatest, pat me on the back, give me high fives, give me kudos for doing this. So I think we should get away from that. I've never really liked that whole personal story times at the State of the Union. I think that's just kind of eh. But overall, like, I think he made some good stuff. Like I said earlier, his closing was really powerful. That America, it's 250 years this July. I think that's pretty cool. And I think Trump really is kind of boastful about the fact that he gets to be president for the 250-year mark of America being a country, which, cool, good for him. But that was kind of it was a good wrap up. His ending, he kind of capped it off really well, even though a lot of the parts, it was a lot of peaks and valleys, and the peaks were pretty good, but the valleys were pretty bad, especially with regard to foreign policy and Iran and tariffs and all that. I know he did mention something about the Warrior dividend, where he kind of drew the story out a little bit longer than he should have, where they're like, we're going to give $17.75 to our military service members, and he goes, what's $1 more? $17.76. That'd make it really cool. Like, okay, and he claims that's all from tariffs and whatever. My stance on tariffs has been pretty consistent. I think tariffs are just passing on a tax to the consumer. I don't think they're all that great to rely so heavily upon them. I think tariffs work better as kind of pushing for domestic manufacturing, even though now we do so little domestic manufacturing of a lot of products, that tariffs, I don't think, are going to solve that. I think what's going to end up happening, because bottom line, from an economic standpoint, tariffs won't solve that, because they're just going to eat that tariff expenditure and pass it on to the consumers. It's not like they're going to stop getting their knickknacks and all their components from China and other places overseas. They're just going to pay more and then pass that on to the consumer, so then we pay more. So that's where I see the modern incantation of tariffs kind of leading. I don't think it's a good economic policy. But overall, yeah, like I said, I'd probably rate it a 6 out of 10. Not the best State of the Union, definitely not the worst. So there's my thoughts on 2026's State of the Union address by President Donald J. Trump. I think the Democrats look like crap. But then again, Republicans cheering for war looked like crap too. I'm still of the persuasion that the Democrats are awful and the Republicans are just a little less awful. But anyway, I'd love to hear your comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and all that really helps out the channel. And I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks for tuning in.